From Founders Financial, this is the Built by and for podcast. Partner-to-partner conversations for independent financial advisors. Today, host Stephen Watts, Chief Growth Officer at Founders Financial, sits down with Christine Walsh, Head of Transitions, and Philip Dubay, Director of Integrations at Founders Financial, to discuss what a real, supported transition looks like and what makes the difference. The fear of moving firms is rarely about the paperwork. It's about the unknown and the worry that the clients won't come. Here's the conversation.
All right, welcome. We got Christine Walsh here, our Head of Transitions from Founders Financial, and our Director of Integration, Philip Dubay. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us. We're going to have a good discussion today. We're going to talk about transitions and the impact it has on advisors, the fears they may have around them, the process which they go through. So we're going to dig into that. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Cool. So, when advisors decide to make the move, right? They hey, we're going to go to a new firm. For whatever reason, they're going to leave their previous one. Describe, in your opinion, what that process is like. Like, what is that feeling like for advisors when they decide to make that move, but now they gotta take on this beast that is transitions? Christine, let's start with you.
Well, I think their first thought it's kind of overwhelming. There is a fear of the unknown of what they're going to be getting into, which is why we're here to help them build a path and give them direction and give them leadership throughout the whole process.
Yeah, oftentimes I think they'll have a excitement factor, but also a nervousness because, like Christine said, there's a lot of unknowns. But generally, by the time where we've had a member commit to joining, there's a lot of excitement because they might be leaving an environment that maybe is not super cohesive to what they're trying to do and how they're trying to lead and grow relationships. So I think that nervous anticipation, excitement is a big emotion that comes out. Yeah,
they're excited to move on. They're moving on for a reason, right?
They're willing to make the change.
There's a problem, whatever it might have been, or a circumstance, and they need to move on. So they're excited about that process, but then this kind of weight of everything I got to do to actually move, right? It's like you buy a new house, right? You're super excited about the new house you bought, but then you got the move. I got to hire movers. I got to get everything boxed up. That's the weight that I think often exists, and as you guys described. So when you talk to advisors who are getting ready to make that move, what's that one common, the big one? When do you hear the most that they're most concerned about? What part of the transition?
I think they are most concerned about how their clients are going to respond to the move. They know why they're making the change, and they are feeling in a way that they need to move, and they feel it's going to be a move for their clients as well. But I think they get nervous about how they're going to communicate that and how their clients are going to respond to them making some changes. And I think that's the vibe I get.
The fear of maybe the client might leave or something like that. It's something like that.
That they might leave. And oddly enough, it is the thing that we've found that
doesn't happen, right?
It doesn't. Their relationships are strong, and they don't need to be worrying about the relationships they have with the clients because they have generated a relationship that is deep and meaningful and trustworthy. So
I don't want to call it an irrational fear, but it's sort of an irrational fear, right? It's like, hey, it's something you have to be aware of, but in reality, the likelihood of that happening is pretty small. Correct. If you've been a great advisor and a great partner with them. Yeah.
I think a lot of that speaks to our vetting process of as we are introduced to new advisors and we start having these conversations. If we think that those are going to be areas of concern, we're probably not getting deep enough into conversations where we're starting to unpack those types of fears.
Yeah, that's not what we do. Is to help them understand. How do we mitigate any kind of client impact, right? How do we make sure that the process is as smooth as possible? So we understand client engagement is a fear. It's a concern that typically bubbles up. What do they often think is going to be the most disruptive thing to their business? And that's a key word, right? Disruptive. So if client fear is a concern, when you go through the process, what is the most disruptive thing that they often think about?
I think mostly they're concerned with running the day-to-day business and doing all the things they need to do, and then now piling on top of that a whole laundry list of what we'll just call transition checklist items, and the extra work needed to actually execute a transition.
Yeah, so they're an advisor, they're a CEO of their business, they're a chief operating officer, a chief marketing officer. Now you're going to throw on, transition expert, right, and mover of your entire work life over to something else, kind of manager on top of that. So yeah, I imagine that would be quite a lot for sure. Any thoughts on that?
No, I agree. I think it's one of those things that we have to just let them know that we've got a path for them. So on that, so how do you help reassure advisors that you work with that, look, this is a process, right? And just like any process, we're going to execute on it, right? And take away this fear of this leap that you have to make and all the negatives that they might perceive in their mind. How do you give them that reassurance and help them through that? So very early on, at the very beginning of the process, we go through and we work with them in evaluating their business and what their clientele. We do what we call a transition guide with them, and we curate a roadmap for them essentially on how their transition is going to work, and it's very unique to them. There are aspects of a transition that every transition must go through. We don't want to leave anything out. We don't want to forget anything. So we have a process that's built in, but then we work with the transitioning member partner to say, this is your life and these are your clients, and how can we work with you to make this unique to you and what is going on in your life and the type of clients you have and the book of business you work with. And it's done very, very early on.
Yeah, they're not alone, right? And that might be another fear that bubbles up is, hey, how much is going to be on me to go do? Kind of that, back to what we were saying before, there are all these different roles, and this is one more add to the list. You reassure them that, no, we've actually got a team and support group to help you kind of navigate this
we have
whole
a
process.
path, and it's full of support. Many all along the way, it's full of support.
And we've executed and done it a bunch, right? So it's not a new thing.
It's a proven process.
One of the things I like to say is that you may not have done this before, or this might be something you haven't done in a while. We do this regularly, so trust us that we are going to be able to walk you through it and hold your hand through the process.
Yeah. But in the same regard, they're all unique to some degree,
absolutely,
right? So talk about that. Talk about how, every transition is a little bit unique. And why they may, vary a little bit here and there.
Yeah, so we're like talking to these advisors, prior to them deciding to join. We're learning things about them, about their business, how they manage things, how they lead relationships, how they execute different aspects of the business, and we're custom tailoring, like Christine said. There's actually it's 192 checklist item workflow document that we go through, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're going through it in the same order for every person, or we might be swapping out, one item for another. So there's a tailored and customized approach to getting their specific transition plan dialed, but it really starts at the very beginning of understanding their values, their needs, their wants, and helping design a implementation and transition process that will help them achieve that.
And I think another part is knowing, evaluating their strengths and limitations, and then being able to say, you're stronger in this areas, and this is the level of what needs to happen with like training or preparation, and maybe this is something you're more limited in, and to say, well, then we all need to all hands on deck, really work and focus on this because it's just not a strength.
Yeah, I imagine that comes up with a lot of people who are really tech savvy versus ones who are maybe not so tech savvy, right? So if you're very tech savvy, it's probably a slightly different process for you. If you're not tech savvy, then it may look a little bit different. But that's where you guys are helping them out. I mean, you're going to get through it one way or the other, and you're going to make it the best process it can possibly be. But that's maybe where some of the variability, I would imagine, comes in.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do things like their size, the complexity of their accounts, like all this stuff, their goals, does any of that kind of change the transition process to a degree?
Yeah, it definitely can. If they're, I'll use two extreme ends of the spectrum, right? You got one firm who's multiple member partners, multiple advisors, broad diverse book of business, different assets, different types of accounts. Maybe they've got alts and annuities and managed money and direct mutual fund business, and there's multiple advisors doing all that. That's going to be a highly complex, size and from a complexity and size standpoint, versus the other end of the spectrum is, solo shop advisor who they're their only employee and they have one custodian and they run all their managed money through that. Those are going to be vastly different from a technical standpoint, just in terms of what we have to do, but in terms of like that overall process and mindset, it's the same guided process of just taking them through step by step, but picking out which pieces are specifically applicable to them.
Yeah, just tailoring it to them a little bit.
Tailoring.
So I mean, this is going back a little bit, but listening has got to be like the first thing you guys are focused on, right? I mean, it's one thing, and I'm sure many firms do this where, hey, here's our process, here's what we're going to do, we're going to check all the boxes, and that's what it is. But I've worked with both of you, and I've seen you go through this process, so I have a little bit of more insight than maybe the people listening. You guys spend a lot of time listening and understanding where their fears are, what's important to them, and you use that to create comfort of what is probably a very uncomfortable process.
Right. And there's touching base and just getting the emotional and mental wellness throughout the process is a key point of what we provide too. It's not just here's our list, we got to check the box and we need to get you from point A to point B. It is are you doing okay? How do you feel about the pace? Just kind of validating that everybody's working and feeling good about how the process is going, because things have happened in people's lives, and they have families or they've got sporting events or weddings and
curveballs come along.
Yeah, things happen, and you just kind of as you're going through the process, you want to just be like, we have you as a whole, as the whole package. It's not just we're trying to get you to point A to point B. You are here for the whole process.
Yeah, it's really important to keep the human element tied to their transition and their integration, because the utility of what we do, we can move your accounts over and we can get you registered in U5.
Which anyone can do. Any firm
right?
can do that.
Yeah, but if you can do that in a way that elevates their human connection and elevates their ability to lead and serve relationships throughout, I think that's where we transform to dynamic territory.
And if you think about it, it's actually, they might not officially be part of the new firm yet, right? It's their first business dealing with their new partner, right? And in many ways, a great transition process, one that is tailored towards them. You take all these emotional pieces into consideration. In many ways, it validates the decision they've made, right? It validates that, hey, you know what? I'm going to someplace where they've got my best interests at heart right from the beginning. Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about technology a little bit, so I'm going to have you start with this one. I'm curious to get your thought on the role of technology, which is evolving by the day, right? And it was a big part of it a couple of years ago. It's a huge part now. It's going to be a bigger part as we move forward. So the role of technology in a smooth transition, what should that role be, and how should technology play an increasingly important role in it?
Yeah, so two answers to that. I'll say one, what it should be, and then maybe one idea of what it shouldn't be. What it should do is be a time saver and an efficiency, producer. We want to avoid manual entering of data whenever we can. So we're going to use, automations and APIs and systems to make your transfer of data from system A to system B as efficiently as it can. What it shouldn't be, and something I have to be mindful of in my role as the director of integrations, it shouldn't be a distraction. We don't want to create a shiny object that now becomes a focal point and then takes focus away from the actual tactical transition piece that needs to happen. We'll get to that point. So sometimes we'll have to be intentional about how we space out and when we decide to show certain technologies and train on certain aspects, because yes, it's super important. It's just not most important right now. Most important right now is maybe, getting your transition spreadsheet and getting all your book of business moved over through the system. So being intentional about when we decide to show certain pieces of technology.
It's a tool, right? So like a hammer is a tool, right? You can build something great. Whether you can build a house, whether you can build whatever, right? You can also use it to smash things, and it can break stuff, right? It can be destructive, right? So how you deploy that technology, how you deploy that tool in the most useful way possible that isn't overwhelming, all that stuff. It's really important.
Right.
anything to add on that?
Well, I was just going to add that one of the things that we like to do is you never see anything one time when it comes to technology. There's like the introduction to the technology, then we kind of like, teach you a little bit more about it. So by the time you are, you forward and you're working on your absolute transition and your book of business and all those pieces, you have felt and touched that piece of technology a couple of times because we don't, like Philip said, we don't want you to get distracted with the shiny things. And so we kind of, feed it out to you gently and slowly and build upon what you've learned on each training session.
Yeah. So getting them fully integrated with, to get them comfortable with is a huge part of it. What does successful technology integration look like from the point of view of the advisor?
Yeah. So first and foremost, getting to the point where they have actually brought over that book of business and executed like the tactical and practical of getting their business transition. If we can do that and minimize, how much late nights and, data entry slogs that they've had to do to get to that point, that's an effective use of technology. And then extending it past that into more of the integration territory is if they have a clear vision for how they can use the tools, the technologies, the systems in their workflow and create the right advisor and client experience and utilizing all the tools in an integrated way, that's kind of like the second phase of what success would look like from a technology standpoint.
Yeah, right. So I want to transition a little bit, no pun intended, to talk about kind of founders' unique approach, right? So there's a lot of firms that do transition very, very well, some that probably don't, but we know there's a lot of people moving these days, and some of them are having good experiences. I think we do transitions very effectively because one thing we do, and I've seen you two do quite a bit, is you put the relationship first, right? You put and we talked about this already. You put the human interaction, the comfort. You put that first and foremost in there. So talk a little bit about the founder's philosophy of transitions and how that may compare to what else other advisors may experience.
I think you kind of touched on it. It's the human element.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can go, hey, here's the paperwork you need to complete. Here's what needs to happen. Do all this, get it back to me by this date, and I'll follow up with you. Let me know if you have any questions. And I have had transitioning member partners tell me that is how transitions have happened with them before. And I'm blown away because our unique take is the human element. We don't put you out on an island. We never put you out on an island. And we build a process very curated to you and what you're doing. I think I said that before. But we are there with regular meetings, regular follow-ups to support. And I think you can't take out the fact that the people at Founders are passionate about what they do. And I know that I'm passionate. I know Philip's passionate. And we want to be part of that human part with you.
There's certainly a utility aspect of every transition, right? There's the practical, tactical brick and mortars of what you got to do, right? Yeah. We don't feel that is our differentiator. We want to be a partner to you. We want to engage in a human connection and understand what makes you want to be a great advisor. And if we can understand that and weave that into our transition and integration process and help you achieve that, we feel like that's going to be transformative.
Yeah, that's well said, because like the blocking and tackling in many ways they're table stakes, right? The technology usually help that for a lot of firms, right? So those things you kind of just have to be good at it, right? Otherwise the transition is going to be bad from the get-go. But to your point, the differentiator is really going that extra mile and getting that full level of comfort. I want to go back some real quick because we kind of glossed over it, but I think it is unique. It stays on this topic as well because it's unique to Founders in many ways, is the technology that they are going to be onboarded to when they come here. The training of that, there's this idea, right, and going around, not just in this industry, but in many industries, is that we have all this great technology and it's a great, incredible capability that it provides. And so often it's not fully utilized. You don't get it seems cumbersome. There's, you're not getting the ROI out of it. It sometimes makes things harder when it's supposed to make things a lot easier. And we don't see that nearly as much, if at all, because I think you guys take a lot of pride and a lot of time on the training aspect. So if you could speak to that a little bit, because I think that's really important.
Yeah, I would say a lot of that comes down to how we envisioned and built out our tech stack from the beginning. So we are in a unique space in the industry where we have a pretty cohesive buy-in of the technology. We don't just partner with every vendor and say, here's your laundry list of technology providers that you can pick and choose from. We have a cohesive selection set of what we've identified as best of breed technologies, for risk management, portfolio analytic, financial planning, we could go on. And a lot of that speaks to our unique culture where our members have entrusted in us the authority to say, hey, look, this is going to be best for you. And this is going to be what we go with. And that allows us to make a much more dynamic training experience because now we can train them on best practice of taking the entire function of what they need to use these tools for, the whole client life cycle from the initial conversation to the data gathering to the financial plan delivery all the way down to like the review meeting and follow-up process. We can integrate each of the technologies into that whole experience in a way that you probably can't do if they just have a pick and choose random assortment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Can either one of you two think of without specific names or anything, but can you think of a moment where you experience where an advisor just kind of like, oh, you know what, this is different. Like this experience is different. And what was that like, that light bulb moment for them? Like, this is, I've made the right choice. What we're doing here is
from a technology aspect,
just from a transition standpoint, right? They're starting to go through that process and they're having conversations with you. What was that light bulb moment you guys can speak of? If you can't, it's okay. I just didn't know if there was a example.
For me, there's one. It was a recent transition that we've worked with, and we were going through the technology integration phase of their transition, and they were mentioning how they had this decent tech stack and where they were coming from. The firm had invested money and a lot of time to get it established, but there was zero support and follow-up to help them effectively use it. The phrase that we would hear from them commonly, or that they would hear from the previous firm, was "figure it out." That was their feedback. So, hey, I've got this technology issue. My financial plan system's not working the way I need it to. Can you help me? And their response back was, you got to go figure it out on your own. There's zero partnership.
Yeah, that's a rough set of instructions. Yeah, to figure it out. So
yeah, and I have just one that when we were initially meeting with a member partner, they were asked for a lot of transparency in the process and how that was going to work and just how founders worked. And as we were going through, they actually came back, they're like, I asked for transparency and you are giving me transparency this whole process through. And that is so appreciated that we are able to communicate and just have that. And that was, you could tell that they're like, I asked for this and that's what I needed to feel supported or listened to. And that's exactly what we were giving them.
Instant comfort, right? Yeah. And That's awesome. Kind of wrapping up here, so kind of go through some rapid fire questions for advisors that are getting ready to go into a transition. Again, they've made that choice, or maybe they're about to make that choice. What should they be thinking about before they get into transition? What should be they going through their mind?
Oh, I would say, what are you you're obviously looking to make a change. Mm-hmm. And if you were not make the change or to make the change, how would your life look different in 6 months, 1 year? How would your firm, how would your clients be? I would suggest, what is causing, compelling you to move? And then how would things be different? Do you have?
So let me ask a different way. If they're getting ready to make a move, they're trying to make a decision if they're going to move to a new firm, what should they be asking their new potential partner about their transition process?
Yeah. So I think in terms of the questions they should ask, and I think it also goes in reverse, what questions the potential firm that they join should be asking. Kind of echoing what we've been saying throughout is more questions about relationship, care, leadership, and less questions about, culture is a great one. Less questions about like maybe specific process details and things like that. Because like we've said, those are the table stakes. Those are the utility, the things that are being commoditized away by AI and technology and all the efficiencies. So if those questions, the leadership, care, relationship type questions are not being asked, that would be some red flags for me.
Yeah, so maybe confirm those things all exist, right? I mean, again, it's table stakes, but then make the bulk of your exploration be around those other areas for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Christine, question for you, and Philip, please feel free to jump in this as well, but what advice would you give to an advisor, which I'm sure you've actually given before, what advice would you give to an advisor who's feeling stuck in fear of this change? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that they are not alone, and that we will support them and hold their hand and get them through the process, and that it is something that is vastly different. They are trying to run a business and have our life and then throw in a transition, so their fears are very, very well founded, but at the same time, we have done this. And we, like I said before, trust in us that we will get you through this process cleanly and smoothly.
Yeah, good partner with your best interests at heart. They're going to make sure you come out the other side in good shape.
And I mean, we love doing this. This is like, we're in these roles because this is something that we really enjoy doing. And so we like to do that. At least I'll speak for myself. I like to do transitions. I love to see the end results, and I love working closely with the member partners very, very much.
It's probably, and I would imagine it would be very rewarding to see an advisor go through this process, which can be, any different amounts of time to get through it, right? Some are really short, some are very long, depending on the nature of their business. But it's got to be very rewarding to see them start one place, probably very concerned, very nervous, very overwhelmed in some cases, and just get to the other side and just feel the peace that will kind of wash all over them.
Yeah.
It's got to be pretty cool for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to chime in on that question too, if an advisor's feeling stuck about making a decision, one question I'd have them ask themselves is, if I weren't to do this, or for God forbid I wasn't able to serve them, how are these relationships that I've spent potentially a lifetime curating and building, how are they going to continue to be cared when maybe I'm not the one doing it?
Yeah.
And if that can probably guide their decision making quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, last question before we wrap up. If an advisor listening to this is going to take one thing away to kind of in their new mindset, right? What is that one thing you want them to leave this conversation with?
Oh. Do you have a thought?
I would say to have more focus on what we've kind of been talking about throughout, the human aspect of what a transition looks like and what's that, relationship impact and how is this transition, this decision going to impact or empower that advisor to lead and serve relationships the most effectively, and maybe less focus on just the little nitty-gritty details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. I was going to say, if you are listening to this and you are thinking that you're thinking about making a change, then you're probably ready to start thinking about making a change. And
you're thinking about it for a reason.
Yeah, you are. There's something that is in your mind, in your heart, that is saying something needs to change, and I want it to be for the better of my clients and the better of myself, and to act on that.
Yeah, you make the leap, right? I mean, if you've got the right partner, and they've got your best interests at heart, the process is the process, but it's a process that can be executed upon, and we'll all get through it. And man, it's kind of what you were saying earlier. If you chose not to do it, you're just accepting the world that you're in, right? And if you're asking the question, you've already determined that's not the world you want to be in.
Right.
So let's get through this process, and we're going to help you make it as easy and painless as possible. And in many ways, they're not all that painful. Sometimes they're
really not.
Yeah, I mean, we may be actually setting up the wrong feeling here. I've seen you guys do a lot of them where they're very easy and they're very straightforward, and it's a great dynamic between the new incoming member for us, the advisor, and our team, and just that feeling of rejuvenation as you get to the end of it, and just the better place that the advisor's in when it's all said and done.
It's all in the preparation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what a privilege is it to be able to choose a challenge or a experience that you have to go through to have the end goal of it be your ability to transform lives in a more impactful way. If you can choose that, that's powerful.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better way to end this conversation than with that. That was fantastic. So thank you all thank you both for coming in and having this conversation with me, and just appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for spending time with us on the Built by and for podcast. If this conversation resonated, follow the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube, and share it with an advisor in your circle who's thinking about what comes next. To learn more about Founders Financial and our solutions for independent advisors, visit foundersfinancial.com. The Built by and for podcast is produced by Founders Financial. The opinions expressed by hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Founders Financial. Content is for informational purposes only and is not intended as investment, legal, or tax advice. Securities offered through Founders Financial Securities, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC, registered investment advisor. Copyright Founders Financial, all rights reserved.